The bell above the door gave a soft jingle as the old man stepped into the appliance store. His jacket was worn, barely shielding him from the cold outside. Each step was deliberate, slow but unwavering. His eyes scanned the rows of machines, pausing in front of a particular washing machine that gleamed under the store lights. A bright yellow tag fluttered slightly. Today only, $499. He squinted at it, then turned toward the nearest employee. "Excuse me," he asked gently, his voice carrying the fragile caution of someone used to being dismissed. "Is this the correct price?" Toby, the young employee, didn't even bother to look up. He smacked his gum and shrugged, his voice flat. "That one?" "Nah, price is wrong. It's $900 now." The old man's brows knitted together, just slightly. "But the sign says—" Toby cut him off with a chuckle that wasn't kind. "Baka, just wash by hand. Easier for you." He laughed at his own joke. No apology followed. No explanation. Just that cold shrug of indifference. The old man stood there, suspended between dignity and humiliation. He didn't argue. Didn't ask again. He simply turned, his steps now heavier than before, and walked back out into the cold. The bell jingled again, but softer this time, like the store itself was ashamed. And then a voice, spoken not to the room, but to memory itself. That old man was my father. Jackson sat alone in his high-rise office. 3 expansive monitors illuminated the room in a sterile glow. Sales graphs climbed upward in aggressive green strokes. Washing machines sold, profit margins soared, quarterly growth exceeded forecasts. Numbers looked flawless. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the edge of the desk. 1, 2, then stopped. The success surrounding him should have felt like triumph, but it didn't. His lips didn't curve into a smile. His eyes didn't flicker with pride. Instead, they lingered on the screen, unmoved. Why does it feel like we're winning and losing at the same time? Outside his window, the city pulsed with movement. Inside, Jackson felt trapped in stillness, trapped in questions that refused to go away. Beside the monitors, a single wooden frame stood. He reached for it like reaching for something already slipping away. In the photograph, a younger version of Martin, his father, grinned beside an old washing machine. Sleeves rolled, hands proudly resting on the lid. Behind him, their first store. Small, humble, but vibrant. There were no dashboards then. No spreadsheets, no forecasts, just people. Martin knew every customer's name. He remembered whose daughter just got married, whose newborn had colic. He didn't run a store. He built a community. Jackson traced the edge of the frame with his fingers. That old machine didn't have bells and whistles, but to Martin, it represented service, trust, dignity. Not just utility, not just a sale. Jackson set the photo down, but the feeling it awakened didn't fade. The screens behind him kept flashing success, but all he saw now was what they couldn't measure. He turned to his laptop, opened the customer feedback file, scrolling, reading. Then he stopped. "I stood in front of the washing machines and felt invisible." Another. "No one even asked if I needed help. I felt like a problem just for walking in." He leaned back, jaw tightening slowly. The feedback wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was honest, and quietly devastating. He looked at the sales graphs again. Numbers rising, humanity fading. The words in the feedback echoed louder than the profits. He closed the laptop gently, but those sentences wouldn't leave him. Are we really serving people, or just moving numbers around? He turned to the window. The city kept moving. Inside, he stayed still. His thoughts drifted again, to the old store, to his father, who needed no analytics, no KPIs, just presence, just care. Success wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to cost this much. Jackson leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. A question whispered from somewhere deep inside. How much have we lost? and didn't even notice. The silence in the room answered, heavy, honest. He spoke softly, not to the office, not to the screens, but to something much older, much truer. Does anyone remember? Does anyone remember how my father served people when all they needed was a washing machine and someone who gave a damn? He looked down at his hands. They were clean, efficient, but empty. Martin didn't need quarterly reports. He needed connection. He didn't talk about customer experience. He lived it. Jackson breathed in slowly and asked again, the weight pressing deeper now. Is there anyone left who still works like that? No answer. Not from the screens, not from the charts, not from the empire he'd built. He opened a hidden folder. Store 7 service reports. Everything was green. Everything looked perfect. He didn't believe it. He opened another file. Customer complaints. Most were brief. Most were sharp. But none were surprising anymore. No one spoke to him. Not a greeting. Not a glance. He had asked for help twice, but no one came. And in that cold, sterile store, Martin felt it deep in his chest. He didn't belong there anymore. Jackson sat in silence, closing the folder with a heavy click. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and without a single word, opened another file. Store 7. Internal review. Staff attitude. The report was empty. Just a blank page. He clicked into the document and typed 2 words. Investigate now. Though he hadn't moved, something inside Jackson had. A silent shift. Not as a CEO reacting to metrics, but as a son grappling with the truth of a father forgotten. Jackson opened the security footage. Black and white. Overhead view. No sound. He pressed play, and Store 7 blinked to life. The sliding glass doors opened, and there he was. Martin. He walked, slowly, his hands behind his back, the way older men do when they're trying not to look like they're bracing against disappointment. His eyes swept across the machines. Jackson leaned forward unconsciously. His breath caught somewhere between memory and heartbreak. Martin stopped at one washer, just stood there. Then, from the corner of the frame, Toby appeared, gum in mouth, posture careless, presence dismissive. Martin spoke. Jackson couldn't hear it, but he didn't need to. He knew the words. Is this price correct? Toby didn't engage, just shrugged, said something brief, and pointed vaguely off screen. Then he turned away, like it meant nothing. Martin didn't move. The footage rolled on. Second after second, frame after frame, silent, stark. Martin just stood there. His gaze dropped to the yellow price tag, then to the floor, his shoulders slightly lowered. A gesture so small, but to Jackson, it felt seismic. Toby vanished from the frame. No apology, no return, just absence. Martin didn't follow. He didn't protest. He remained still, next to a machine he once would have introduced with warmth, next to a sign that now mocked his memory. Jackson's jaw locked. His right hand slowly curled into a fist, not from fury, but from a quieter, heavier ache. Realization. This wasn't an accident. It was a routine. He paused the video. The screen froze on his father's face, distant, weary, fading into the background like a man swallowed by a company he once built from kindness. Jackson looked away, just for a second, but the silence stayed with him. He switched tabs and opened the internal staff chat. Messages pinged, casual, fast, detached. Then one caught his eye. Another old man wandered in asking about washing machines. He read it again. Then another. Probably thought it's still 1980. A laughing emoji followed. Then, let him stare. He'll leave. Jackson's entire body went still. He reread the thread. Word for word. Each sentence sharper than the last. His breath slowed, his pulse thick with disbelief. This wasn't careless banter. This was culture. This was who they had become when no one was watching. Jackson pressed play on the footage again. His father turned and walked away. No words, No resistance. Just the quiet dignity of someone who'd already been pushed out long before the door closed behind him. He walked past the models he once sold with pride, past the machines he used to describe to every customer like old friends. No one stopped him. No one looked up. Employees stood nearby, lost in their phones, laughing at something that wasn't him, but still somehow about him. Martin reached the exit. He paused, looked back once, not at the people, but at the machines, as if searching for something familiar. Then he lowered his head and stepped out. The doors slid shut behind him. No one followed. No one noticed. Jackson froze the frame, his father, leaving his own store like a stranger, like he was never part of it, like he had become a shadow of the man who started it all. Jackson stared at the image, hands trembling. His father didn't belong there anymore, and neither, it seemed, did he. He shut the video, opened the sales report for Store 7, top region in unit sales, highest profit margins, excellent upsell performance, targets exceeded, glowing numbers, and beneath it, a single line. Store 7 performance, outstanding. He scrolled further. Customer complaints, rising, refund requests, up, negative reviews, increasing. 2 stories, same store. Which one was real? He stared at the green curves of success, then at the red flags screaming underneath. "We're selling machines," Jackson whispered to no one. "But we're losing people." The reports didn't argue. The data didn't care. But Jackson did. Now he did. He opened another folder, customer service logs. Clicked on one entry, a complaint recording from Store 7. A woman's voice, quivering. "My washing machine isn't working, it's brand new." Mark's reply, flat, unbothered. "Probably your fault, ma'am." A pause. The woman tried to explain. "I just followed the manual." Mark cut her off. "Then maybe you read it wrong." Jackson clenched his jaw. Mark kept going. "We sell machines. We don't fix mistakes people make at home." The woman's voice broke. "I'm sorry." She apologized for a defective product. Jackson's eyes closed. Then Mark's final blow. "Next time, buy the extended warranty." Jackson stopped the audio. Didn't speak, didn't move. But inside, something cracked. Not a chip, a split. This wasn't about machines anymore. It was about people. People who had stopped caring. People who had forgotten what it meant to serve. Jackson sat alone in the dark. Office lights off. Just the glow of the city casting shadows on the walls. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and covered his face with both hands, his breathing slow and silent. In front of him, the photo frame stood, glowing softly in the monitor's light. He reached out, lifted it. Martin's face looked younger at night, kinder. A man standing beside the first washing machine they ever sold, one hand resting on it, not for display, but with reverence, like it was sacred, like it mattered. Because back then, it did. Jackson stared at the photo in his hands as if it held answers to questions he couldn't form aloud. The edges were slightly worn, the glass cool against his fingertips. His father's eyes in the photo, young, earnest, seemed to look straight through him. He said nothing. Hours passed. The city outside shifted from night to early gray dawn, but inside, Jackson remained unmoved. He hadn't slept, hadn't shifted. He held the photo not like a memory, but like an apology he couldn't yet say. Finally, in the quiet stillness of dawn, he whispered to no one but the man in the frame, "I'm sorry, Dad." His voice cracked on the last word. He placed the photo down gently, reverently, like it was sacred, and continued to sit there. Because clarity doesn't always come with sunrise, and some decisions, real decisions, don't wait for daylight. Not this one. When morning came, Jackson didn't speak. He didn't announce his thoughts. He didn't rehearse what he would say. He simply opened his laptop. His fingers moved slowly, deliberate, unwavering. He typed, "Subject, mandatory meeting recipients, all regional managers' body, today. No excuses." He hit send, then leaned back in silence. He knew they would come. They wouldn't know why. Not yet, but they would come. He closed the laptop and let his eyes drift back to the photo one last time, then rose. The air in his office felt colder than usual. There was nothing left to analyze. No projections to believe in. Just one meeting, one truth, and a decision already rooted deep inside him. In the boardroom, Jackson took his place at the long, polished table. No stacks of reports, no printouts. Just his tablet, resting in front of him like a loaded question. He tapped the screen, opened a video file, the security footage from Store 7, and let the first frozen frame appear. His father. Standing silently beside the washing machines, he didn't hit play. Not yet. He adjusted the volume, checked the battery, then folded his hands and waited. Not for tech support, not for timing. He was letting the image speak before the footage did. This moment wasn't about him anymore. It was about them, the ones who were about to walk in. And in another corner of Store 7, another video clip played, one no one else had seen. A young woman moved among the machines, her steps slow, her focus steady. Her name tag read, Sophie. She paused at a display. The price tag had slipped. She noticed. Without being asked, without anyone watching, she knelt to fix it. She didn't rush, didn't fumble. Then, with careful grace, she dusted the surface of the machine. No instruction, no recognition, just care. The machine wasn't hers. But for that brief moment, she treated it like it mattered. Jackson didn't interrupt the video. He didn't speak. Just watched her in silence. In a store full of noise and dismissal, here was a quiet flicker of dignity. Not grand, but real. He made a small note on his tablet. Sophie. Then closed the file, eyes distant. And for the first time in years, Jackson heard his father's voice again. Not a memory, but a presence. Selling a washing machine means nothing, son. It's just metal, wires, water. What matters is the person using it. Martin's voice echoed in his mind, calm, certain. People don't remember what you sold them. They remember how you made them feel. Selling needs heart. Jackson opened his eyes. The boardroom was still empty, but the truth wasn't waiting. It was already here. The machines had been sold, but no one had felt seen. No one had felt valued. Maybe that's why the data looked perfect, but felt hollow. Jackson held the photo frame again, stared into his father's quiet smile, and whispered back, I forgot that. The room remained silent, filled with more weight than any quarterly report. Then, they arrived. The managers of Store 7 took their seats around the table. No one spoke. No one knew why they were called, but they felt it. Toby crossed his arms, restless. Mark leaned back, unimpressed. A few whispered guesses. New targets, a surprise audit. But no one really believed it. Not today. Jackson's chair sat empty. The door remained closed, and each second stretched longer than the last, feeding a quiet dread no one could name. Then the door opened. Jackson entered. No folder, no slides, no speech. He walked to the head of the table, placed his tablet down, lifted his eyes just once to scan the room, and pressed play. The screen came alive. Store 7. An old man entered the frame, walked slowly past the machines, paused in front of one labeled $499. Toby leaned forward slightly, confused. On screen, his own body language played back at him. Dismissive, inattentive. They watched as the old man, Martin, stood alone, was ignored, then turned and left the store, unacknowledged. Silence filled the room. No narration, no context, just the raw footage, unfiltered. Jackson said nothing. He didn't need to. The managers watched, some with shame, some with confusion, all with stillness. They recognized the layout. They recognized the store. They recognized themselves, but not the man they'd failed to see. Not yet. until Jackson whispered, barely audible, "Keep watching." No one looked away. The video ended. The screen went black. Still, Jackson did not speak. Toby looked down. Mark shifted, uncomfortable. Someone cleared their throat, but it died in the air. The silence wasn't awkward. It was deserved. Heavy. Punishing. No one dared to ask who the old man was, but most of them already knew. They just didn't want to believe it. Jackson's voice broke the silence. Calm, precise, final. He wasn't just another customer. No one breathed. Jackson's eyes didn't flinch. "That man was my father." Toby's face drained. Mark stopped pretending to be bored. Jackson continued. Not louder, but deeper. And more than that. He paused, letting the weight settle. "He's the man who built this company." Jackson's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Its gravity came from the weight of truth, not volume. He opened the first store, sold the first washing machine, trained the first employee. Each sentence was a quiet strike. The man you ignored. The man you mocked. A long pause. The man you let walk out. The room didn't breathe. No justification. No murmurs. Only the cold realization of who they had failed. Jackson scanned the faces in front of him. Toby's eyes glued to the floor. Mark's shoulders slumped. Defenseless. The rest glanced around, searching for an escape route that wasn't there, and none of them found one. The silence thickened. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of guilt. They weren't thinking about sales now. They were thinking about him, the man who had created the very floors they stood on, and whom they had let walk out unnoticed. Toby clenched his jaw, trying to speak, but his voice never came. Mark rubbed his palms on his knees. Useless gesture. Jackson didn't fill the silence. He let it wrap around them, because no lecture could punish them more than the truth already had. "You forgot who gave you this job." Still, no one looked up. "You forgot the man who built these stores." He paused. Let it hurt. "You forgot why we opened our doors in the first place." Each word was a blade made of clarity. He looked them all in the eyes. Toby, Mark, and the rest. All of you. They said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. "You didn't fail as salespeople." Another pause. "You failed as people." The words didn't just land. They settled. Jackson leaned back in his chair and let it hang. Because failure wasn't about missed quotas. It was about forgetting the very hands that made success possible. And they all knew. They had forgotten. He didn't yell, didn't lecture. Just 2 words. "Get out." Toby's eyes shot up. Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came. Jackson didn't repeat himself. His voice didn't need to. "You don't work here anymore." The sentence dropped like a gavel. Not a punishment, but a verdict. Mark rose first, his hands trembling. Toby followed, head down. Neither said a word. Neither looked back. Because they knew. This wasn't about policies or percentages. They had failed at the only thing that mattered. And Jackson didn't owe them explanation. He only owed his father justice. The door closed behind them. Jackson turned to the rest. "No," he said calmly. "I'm not firing the rest of you." Some lifted their heads. Confused, wary. "Firing you would be easy." A pause. "I'm giving you something harder." He leaned forward, voice cutting through the silence. "You're going to relearn how to serve people. Not as a punishment, but as a path to redemption. You're going to relearn why we exist." He paused, gaze sharp. "And if you fail at that, you'll fire yourselves." The silence shifted. This wasn't about job security. It was about who they chose to be now, because second chances, real ones, aren't a gift. They're pressure. Jackson saw the fear change on their faces. This wasn't punishment anymore. It was expectation. He lowered his voice, making every syllable pierce. "Washing machines don't save this company." Silence. Profit margins don't save this company. Another beat. The way we serve people, that's what keeps us alive. He let the words breathe. Anyone can sell a machine. His eyes locked on each face. But not everyone can make someone feel seen. And if we can't do that, he paused, we don't deserve to exist. No one argued. No one looked away. From now on, Jackson said, people come first. Not charts, not commissions, people. And then, quietly, but forever, kindness isn't optional. It's survival. 1 week later, the doors of Store 7 opened again. Martin stepped inside. His steps were slow but steady. He carried no anger, just memory. Beside him, Jackson walked silently, not leading, following. Because this place belonged to Martin first. The store looked the same. Machines lined the floors, lights gleamed. But the air had changed. The employees saw him immediately, and this time, they didn't look through him. They froze. Every head turned, every breath caught. No one moved. No one had prepared for this moment. No one knew what to do. And Jackson said nothing, because this moment didn't belong to him. It belonged to his father. Martin kept walking, past the machines, past the signs, straight into the silence. No one dared approach. Until one by one, they did. No script, no command, just instinct. They formed a quiet line in front of him, eyes down, hands still. Not out of fear, out of shame and respect. Martin stopped walking. He looked at them. Not with judgment, not with pride, just silence. The same silence they had once offered him. But this time, it meant something else. This time, it said we're sorry without a single word. From the line, one figure stepped forward. Sophie. Her hands trembled, but she walked and stood in front of Martin. She lifted her head, voice shaking. I'm sorry, sir. Martin didn't respond. She continued, softer now. I didn't know who you were. She swallowed. But that shouldn't have mattered. A beat. You deserved better. Martin looked at her, his expression unreadable. Sophie's eyes filled. She bowed her head. I'm sorry. Not because you're the founder. Her voice cracked. But because you were a customer. Silence followed. Jackson stood a few steps behind, watching, saying nothing. Because this wasn't about business anymore. It was about being seen. And in that moment, Martin finally was. Martin didn't turn away. He didn't step back. Without fanfare or hesitation, he stepped forward. Sophie kept her head down, trying to steady her breath, but her body betrayed her. She trembled slightly, overwhelmed by the weight of a moment she'd never expected. Then she felt it. A hand. Gentle. Solid. Forgiving. Martin's hand rested on her shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. In that quiet, humble gesture was everything. Grace, forgiveness, dignity. A language without sound, a statement without speech. Sophie didn't cry out, but her tears fell freely, not from shame anymore, but from release. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She felt it in her bones. She was forgiven. Martin's hand stayed there for only a few seconds. But in that time, it did what no speech could. It gave peace. Then he stepped back, and that was enough. The store remained silent. But inside Sophie, something softened. Something let go. Because sometimes the softest touch says everything. Jackson watched. He didn't move forward. He didn't interrupt. His arms remained folded across his chest, his gaze steady. Software. He wasn't the center anymore. He wasn't the one guiding the moment. This was his father's moment. Martin had led, not with a title, not with power, but with presence. And Jackson understood. This wasn't just a lesson for the staff. It was a lesson for him, from the man who built everything without needing to raise his voice, from the man who still led, even in silence. Finally, Jackson spoke. His voice low, measured, Not to the team, not even to Martin, but to himself. A store doesn't die because it loses customers. He paused. It dies when it forgets the person who built it. The words floated, heavy and real. He looked at his father, standing tall, still quiet, still dignified. Jackson whispered again, "Numbers don't keep a business alive. Gratitude does." The employees listened, not because they were ordered to, but because there was nothing left to say. Jackson looked down for a moment, then back up at Martin. And in that silence, he finally saw the real truth. One that graphs never showed. The reason their doors were ever opened, the reason they mattered, and why today mattered more than ever. Sophie stepped back. Then another employee stepped forward, a small envelope in his hand. No fanfare, no announcement. Inside it, a handwritten note, paid in full. Jackson nodded once, slow and certain. The employee's voice came quietly, respectfully. "Sir, this washing machine is yours." Martin looked at the group. Still no words, but his eyes told them everything. No talk of money, no receipt, no paperwork. This wasn't a transaction. It was a message, unwritten, unsigned, just given. The machine wasn't flashy, not top of the line, but it had been chosen with care, with thought, with something too rare in retail: heart. Martin placed a hand gently on the machine's top. The store watched in collective silence. Because in that moment, a washing machine became more than metal and wires. It became a silent apology, and a quiet declaration that respect was returning. Sometimes a machine is more than a machine. Sometimes it's a promise. Later that night, Jackson sat alone in his office. The city lights shimmered outside his window. He opened the security feed one last time. The screen displayed Store 7. Not empty, not careless, not cold. This time the staff stood in a quiet line, heads lowered, postures still. At the center, Martin. Beside the machine they'd given back to him. Jackson watched in silence. He thought back to that first footage. His father walking out, invisible. Now, that image was replaced. Martin seen, respected, remembered. Jackson froze the frame. The still image burned into his memory. Martin surrounded not by customers or employees, but people, real people. And for the first time, Jackson understood something simple and absolute. The store hadn't changed. The people had. He leaned back slowly, the frozen image still glowing on the screen. Then he spoke aloud, only to himself. "Don't let numbers kill gratitude." The sentence lingered. He said it again, quieter, like a promise etched into the air. Don't let numbers kill gratitude. It wasn't for his reports. It wasn't for the team. It was for him. Because charts would keep climbing, machines would keep selling, but without gratitude, none of it mattered. Without people, none of it would last. He looked at the screen one last time, at his father, at the staff, at what was finally restored. Then closed the video, and sat still in silence. Because gratitude isn't measured, it's remembered. And he vowed he would never forget again. Let me ask you something. Do you remember the person who gave you your first chance? The one who opened the door when no one else even noticed you standing outside? Do you remember their name? Their face? Or did time move too fast? Did success whisper lies that you did it all on your own? Because forgetting is easy, but behind every success is a quiet moment you didn't earn. Someone believed in you before you had proof they should. And maybe today, maybe right now, you owe them more than silence. Maybe you owe them a simple thank you. Not someday, not when it's convenient. Today, because opportunities fade, but gratitude shouldn't. So pause, right now. Ask yourself, who gave you your chance? And have you told them? Because if you haven't, you're not too late. Not yet. Gratitude isn't a feeling. It's a choice. Every single day. You either remember or you forget. And forgetting? Forgetting feels easier. Until one day, you realize you've become someone your younger self wouldn't respect. So hold on to it. Your gratitude. It's not weakness. It's how you stay human. It's how you protect the people who carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. Because this story, it was never about washing machines. Not really. It was always about people. The ones who walk through your doors. The ones who ask for help. The ones who just want to be seen. And the moment you forget them, your company begins to die. Not in a crash, but in silence. Because no machine ever built loyalty. No machine ever said thank you. Only people can do that. And only people can save what truly matters. Just like they saved Martin. Just like they saved Store 7. And maybe, just maybe, they can save you. So think, right now, who did you forget? Who helped you when no one else did? Picture their name, their face, their voice. And if you remember, don't just remember. Say something, a message, a call. A simple, quiet thank you, not because they need to hear it, but because you need to say it. Gratitude isn't debt, it's a decision. So today, choose it. Send that message, make that call, say the words before life moves too fast again, because people aren't machines. And gratitude? Gratitude only lasts if you fight to protect it. So, who comes to mind? Don't wait. Tell them.